Hello, my name is Nouman Ashraf, and I am a professor at the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto. And it is my privilege to welcome you into this asynchronous session. And the idea behind this asynchronous session is to talk about this idea of how do we take impact out of the classroom by connecting with community partners, both as learners and as teachers. So I want to locate myself in this conversation by saying that this pandemic has taught us a lot as educators, as members of faculty, about the way in which we can learn new things. So who amongst us has not had to figure out Zoom or Canvas or Blackboard Collaborate or something of that nature to figure out how we can connect with our students, engage our learners, and to amplify our impact? There are three things in particular for myself as someone who teaches leadership development, governance, and social innovation that are top of mind. Thing number one that I've learned from the pandemic is that privilege inequity is real. What does that mean? Well, it means that our learners are in a variety of places and spaces vis-a-vis technological ability, access to internet, thinking about their own personal lives and space, and just their own psychic load that they're carrying. Understanding this has really made me more conscious of how do I contribute to actually making those conditions better. Insight number two, that the great good old days weren't so great and good for so many of us. And I think as educators who have enormous organizational privilege, we need to ask the question, well, how do we change that? How do we, here's a catchphrase for you, build back better in a tangible way? And we'll talk about how this pertains to the topic at hand today. And thirdly, I think this idea of building back better requires for us to work with others outside of just academia. So I want to suggest that there's some techniques, some ideas that you might find refreshing in this short video. You'll hear from my learners, you'll hear from my student consultants, you'll hear from also partners in community who will talk about why it is important for us to engage in this. I hope that you will find this helpful, practicable. Here's my email. Do drop me a line for further dialogue. Thank you very much for engaging with us.
Why did I choose leading social innovation as an elective course? I feel that I've been really disenfranchised over the past few years with the deep disparity and discrimination that's created by the modern form of capitalism. But I don't feel like it has to be this way. Leading social innovation seemed like a course where I'd have a chance to have directed reflection on how to be business leaders that challenge assumptions and drive towards more equitable distribution of power. I thought this would be a course where we could learn about how to design economies and communities in a way that was truly designed for all.
When Professor Nouman Ashraf approached me 2 years ago to work in partnership on social innovation challenges, I could not say no. What an opportunity. Knowing Professor Ashraf's reputation in the field of diversity and inclusion was definitely a key motivator. The UTS strategic plan has as one of its pillars a commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We were excited to partner with teams in the MBA class teaching social innovation, who would act as social innovation consultants, guiding the school, providing in-depth analysis of our issues and advice for next steps in this important area of our school strategic plan. We worked together over 2 years with 4 groups of MBA students, and these were the challenges that we tackled: enhancing the diversity of our applicant pool and our admissions. Number 2, UTS was rebuilding our school after 108 years and wanted insights into how best to engage our diverse parent population in our advancement efforts. Number 3, UTS Student Life, the co-curricular part of our school community, sought support in how to provide leadership training for our students that would ensure that their thinking and practices reflected a deep appreciation of issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And finally, number 4, UTS has a partnership with the Munk School of Global Affairs called the Global Ideas Institute. And the partnership involves school teams each year, about 30 schools across the GTA, tackling social innovation challenges related to UN sustainability goals. For each challenge, Professor Ashraf ensured that the consultation process adapted to meet the needs of the clients, the school. MBA students involved who had taken the course previously served in a liaison capacity, and this resulted in excellent communication between the student groups and the school, facilitating identification of needs, data collection, analysis, and interpretation of results, and the recommendations presented hit the mark in every case. Now, finally, as an MBA graduate myself, I would have found this approach incredibly valuable. The emphasis on working on authentic problems with clients and applying knowledge and skills learned in both this course and other MBA courses provided the MBA students with an extremely unique experience. The monitoring by the graduate liaisons ensured that we, the clients, were always at the forefront. And the focus was on making the process as smooth as possible and providing feedback integrated throughout the approach. And that was critical, I believe, to the success of the project and made me come back again for a second year. And I'm Nouman, just so you know, I'm on board again. I can certainly imagine this approach working in a range of MBA courses. The focus on case analysis aspect of the work was also valuable, and we discussed possibly turning some of these challenges into case studies. So I just want to conclude by saying thank you to Nouman, thank you to all the MBA students and the MBA Social Innovation course. This was an exceptional opportunity, and we appreciated your dedication to truly building partnership.
Hello, my name is Erin Tsutsumoto, and I am a former student of Professor Nouman Ashraf at the Rotman School of Management. I had the immense pleasure of working with him on an independent study project while in my second year at Rotman during my MBA. And the purpose of the independent study project, or ISP, was to explore where business design and leadership development intersected, because those were my two interests, and I thought it would be a really cool way to sort of strengthen those areas of interest. And within this project, I had the opportunity to connect with many leaders across sectors who were part of Nouman's network, and the people who were doing this type of leadership development work in their own organizations and in their own teams. And in doing that work and kind of exploring why they were doing their own leadership work, it really broadened my scope of who even is doing leadership work in their community or across communities and why it's important to them. And I think my biggest takeaway was you can't really put a cap or a definition on who's done leadership work because it's different for everyone, but also people who do it successfully have very similar ways of leading. And so that really taught me a lot about my own leadership style, my own leadership development. And as I move on from Rotman and after I graduate from my MBA, I really feel that the work that I've done on the ISP will help guide me towards my next leadership development endeavor and opportunity, and use what I've learned moving forward. So I'm really appreciative of my chance that I had to work on this ISP and learn a bit more about myself and learn more about how leaders can be impactful in the community. Thank you.
Yeah, so I work on transportation issues mostly. A lot of my work really at the most basic is helping people find alternatives to the car. In Canada, one of the biggest sources of greenhouse gases is transportation. And so we want to give people alternatives. So a lot of my work is building out things like bike lanes and promoting public transit. So people have an efficient, fast alternative to the car so they can leave that at home. That's a lot of the work that I do. With the Rotman students, I work particularly on the bike lane piece, getting some of your students' advice, which was great advice, by the way, we'll get into that, about how we could build some bridges, some common ground with business to get their support for bike lanes. Yeah, I mean, so first of all, just making it known that you have this incredible pool. I mean, what was really exciting for us was literally up the street from our office. We're downtown, you're a 20-minute walk from our office. Is this pool of folks who are willing to help. I mean, just making it known to the nonprofit world that a professor has a group of students who are willing to work with the nonprofit sector is great. The second thing I would say is that as a management prof, when you're picking partners, picking groups whose worldview or experience or background is very different from MBA students can be very exciting. I really appreciated the fact that many of the students I was working with had a very different background from mine. You know, I don't have a finance background. I don't have a business background. I don't have a management background. I think that intersection between MBA students and environmentalists, for example, is a very exciting discussion, a very heady discussion, and a really useful one. You know, there's this popular misconception that, you know, environmentalists are sort of, and business folks are oil and water, that they don't mix. And I think it's nonsense. I think we can learn a lot from MBA students and business schools. And I think, frankly, they probably can learn some stuff from us. So I think in terms of when you're picking your partners, I think it's really great to pick folks who, you know, have a very different worldview, and frankly, where there's going to be some differences and conflicts, and that's very healthy, I think.
Hi, my name is Alicia Riolino, and I was a student consultant with Nouman Ashraf, professor at the Rotman School of Management. I was also a student in his Leading Social Innovation course when it was still an experimental course. I worked with him for 2 years on 2 iterations of Leading Social Innovation. As a former student of Leading Social Innovation, I thought that it was really interesting that we had the opportunity to provide feedback. That was a key component of Nouman's class, was giving feedback at the end of every class. And the chance to sort of build that into future offerings of the course was something that appealed to me both from a learning perspective, so beginning to understand how to construct a course, what efforts actually go into delivering something as involved as Leading Social Innovation, really, but then also understanding sort of more behind pedagogy, how teaching and learning occurs, and what role both students and teachers play in providing that, in creating that environment.
Because I had the good fortune of learning from Nouman. A few years ago, I met him at the Academy of Canada's Outstanding Principals. Every year, a group of us would come to Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto and spend some time together learning, and Nouman was the course director. And I've always believed that the worlds of business and education have a lot to teach each other and learn from each other. I'm an educator through and through. I don't really understand business much at all. But I have learned a lot from reading business literature and from talking to business people and engaging consultants, MBAs, and so on and so forth in my work. And I think that the two worlds can be isolated. I think the business world moves much more quickly than the education world, but the education world knows how to create learning communities in a very deep and meaningful way. So I think we have a lot to learn from each other. So the opportunity to be part of something that Rotman's was doing was exciting. I'm the principal of a little elementary independent school, the Maven School. We're Canada's first Ashoka Changemaker school. So we were recognized in 2016 for being especially good at nurturing empathy, leadership, problem solving, and teamwork in our students. In fact, our mission is to create the next generation of original thinkers, adaptive leaders, and caring citizens. And I believe we have a public purpose. And again, oftentimes private schools and public schools do not interact, but I think having worked in both systems, they both have a lot to teach each other. So I've always found it exciting to think about what being in an independent school can mean in terms of impact on the world of education and the world of the world in general, because we're creating these extraordinary young citizens and leaders. And I also think that Maven's at a time in its history. It's been modeling excellence in progressive education for 40 years, but it's been a little insular. I think it's at a time where we can start to think about our impact on the greater world, and I wanted to get some advice about that. I was a guest speaker twice, and the first time I would say was moderately successful, and the second time was extremely successful. And I think that has as much to do with me as it does with the student teachers. I think I learned from the first experience how I could be most useful to them and how they could be most useful to me. So in the first experience, I found it, interesting and delightful to meet these young MBA students who came from a diversity of experiences and could bring a whole different lens to my organization. We're small, so we needed the help from anybody we could get the help from. But I think the question that we developed in the first go around was probably too broad, and so and the response was a little bit cookie cutter in that it was kind of more theoretical than authentic. But I don't think that was necessarily their fault. I think what happened was in the second run, I did a better job of speaking because I understood my role a bit better, and I think I did a better job of helping the groups focus the questions, and also helping myself focus the questions, and giving input about what would be an authentic way to engage in the research.
I learned a lot from the student consulting experience, and in particular, I got a chance to see that course through my peers' eyes, and that helped me really better understand two things. One, what the kind of shifting thought processes are of a student in the course who maybe hasn't spent a lot of time working on issues of social impact, and how the course shifts mental models for students. And then the second thing is the important role that this course plays in helping students challenge their previous thinking and adjust their mental models of what social innovation looks like and what their role could be in the future.